My wife abandoned me and ran away with the baby after giving birth. A few months later, she humiliated me in court while demanding child support. I don't have a job, so I won't stop leeching off you, she said as everyone laughed. But just as the verdict was about to be delivered, I reached into my bag and said, "Actually, Your Honor, I have something to add." Chapter 1. The Empty Crib. The first night after my son was born should have been the happiest of my life. I remember standing by the hospital crib, staring down at him, so small, so perfect, his tiny fists curling and uncurling as he slept. I whispered promises to him that I'd always protect him, that I'd give him the life I never had. But when I turned toward the bed, something was off. My wife wasn't looking at him with love, she was staring past him, cold and distant. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was exhaustion, the haze of childbirth. But her words shattered me. "You'll never be enough for us." I froze. She turned her face to the wall and closed her eyes, leaving me to rock our newborn alone. The next morning the crib was empty, the hospital bed too. She was gone, no note, no explanation, just gone. With my son. I called, I begged, I knocked on her family's doors, nothing. Weeks passed in silence, each day a knife twist, I drowned in worry. Was my son okay? Did he even know me? Or was he already learning to live without his father? Then, months later, a letter arrived. Not an apology, not an explanation. A court summons. Chapter 2. The Courtroom Mockery. The courtroom smelled faintly of paper and old wood polish. My heart hammered as I walked in, clutching the hope that maybe today, at last, I'd see my son again. But when I saw her, seated confidently at the plaintiff's table, all hope turned into a cold knot in my stomach. She looked radiant, dressed in designer clothes I knew she couldn't afford without help. My son was in her arms, bigger now, but still with the same soft cheeks I remembered. He looked at me, curious, but unknowing. When her turn came to speak, she stood tall and delivered her lines like an actress who had rehearsed them for months. "Your Honor, he abandoned us. He has no means, no stability. I don't have a job, so I won't stop leeching off him. That's what child support is for, isn't it?" The gallery erupted in laughter. Even her lawyer smirked. I clenched my fists under the table, every fiber of me screaming to stand, to shout the truth. But I didn't. Not yet. Every word was a dagger. I had been searching, begging, losing sleep, tearing myself apart while she paraded around as if she were the victim. People shook their heads at me, whispering pathetic under their breath. The judge, too, seemed unconvinced by me. His eyes lingered longer on her, nodding slightly at her performance. The balance of the room leaned entirely against me, and then the judge raised his gavel. The verdict was about to be delivered. That's when I stood. My voice was calm, my hand steady as I reached into my bag. "Actually, Your Honor," I said, the room falling into silence. "I have something to add." Every eye turned toward me. Even my wife froze, her smile faltering. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. Chapter 3. The evidence that changed everything. The silence in the courtroom was heavy. Even the judge's gavel hovered midair as he fixed his eyes on me. I unzipped my bag and pulled out a thick folder, the papers neatly clipped, every page stamped and verified. My lawyer stood beside me, sliding the first document onto the judge's desk. "Your Honor, this is a series of bank statements showing multiple withdrawals made from my account in the weeks after she left me. She didn't run because she was abandoned, she ran because she drained me first." The gallery murmured, her smug smile faltered. Next I reached deeper into the folder and placed a USB drive before the clerk. "And this, Your Honor, is security footage from her mother's house. It shows her bragging about how she planned to humiliate me in court. Her exact words were, 'He'll pay for the rest of his life.'" The clerk plugged it in, the screen flickered, and there she was, laughing, glass of wine in hand, boasting to her parents about bleeding me dry. The laughter in the gallery stopped dead. Now there was only silence, thick and condemning. The judge leaned back, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he turned, slowly, toward my wife. "Is this your voice? Your words?" Her face went pale. She stammered, then went silent. The room knew the answer. She thought today would end with me branded a failure, a paycheck to her arrogance. But with every page, every clip, the truth shifted the ground under her feet. And for the first time since she left me, I wasn't the one on trial. She was. Chapter 4. The verdict turns. The judge tapped his pen against the desk, the sound echoing through the now breathless courtroom. He leaned forward, staring directly at my wife. You came into this courtroom claiming to be abandoned, claiming to be in need, yet the evidence shows calculated manipulation and deliberate financial theft. Her lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. She looked at her lawyer, but even he sat frozen, sweat beading at his temple. The gallery, which just minutes before had laughed at me, now watched her unravel in silence. The judge's tone hardened. Child support exists to protect the child, not to bankroll deceit. Your actions are not only reprehensible but criminally questionable. This court will not reward such behavior. He turned toward me. Sir, rest assured, your rights as a father will be recognized, and as for custody, we will revisit this matter with your evidence fully on record. I felt my chest loosen for the first time in months. For once, the truth wasn't buried beneath her lies. It was shining in the open, undeniable. Gasps spread as the judge declared her request for child support denied pending investigation into her actions. The smug friends who had come to cheer her on sat in stunned silence. Even her parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My wife, who walked in so confident, was now trembling. Her arrogance had dissolved into a desperate glance around the courtroom as if someone might still defend her. But no one did. The gavel struck. She thought she'd humiliate me, brand me as worthless, and walk away with my money. Instead, she left the courtroom exposed, humiliated, and facing consequences she never imagined. And I hadn't even played my final card yet. Chapter 5. The final blow. The gavel had already fallen, but I wasn't finished. As the court began to adjourn, I calmly reached back into my bag. My lawyer handed the judge one last folder, thicker than the rest. Your Honor, before we conclude, there's something else the court should see. Evidence gathered over the past few months, not only of her siphoning funds but of her private accounts, luxury purchases, and transactions using money she claimed she didn't have. The judge's eyes narrowed as he flipped through the pages. Photos of luxury handbags, hotel receipts with another man's name, flights booked under false pretenses. The gallery gasped. My wife bolted upright, her voice trembling with desperation. Those aren't mine. I was borrowing. But her excuses were drowned by the murmurs of the courtroom, each word another nail in the coffin of her credibility. Even her own lawyer slid his chair back slightly, distancing himself from the spectacle. The judge's voice thundered through the room. Not only is your petition for child support denied, but this court is ordering an immediate investigation into fraud and perjury. Until further notice, custody arrangements will be reviewed with priority toward the father. Her knees buckled. She collapsed back into her seat, staring at me with wide, tear-streaked eyes. The arrogance, the smugness, the cruel laughter, all gone. She thought she had destroyed me. She thought she'd walked into court to bleed me dry. But as the bailiff collected the evidence and the judge's ruling echoed in the room, it was clear, I hadn't just defended myself, I'd turned the trial into her downfall. And from that day forward, every time she looked at our son, she'd remember the day her lies ended in flames. Chapter 6. The aftermath and the lesson. The verdict may have been the climax, but the real story unfolded in the days and months that followed. My wife's plan had been to paint herself as the struggling mother, the abandoned victim. Instead, her arrogance had sealed her fate. Financially. With her siphoning exposed, her assets were frozen. Investigations into fraud drained what little credibility she had left. Socially. The friends who laughed with her in court avoided her now, unwilling to be tied to the scandal. Even her parents, once her fiercest defenders, quietly distanced themselves. Legally. With the evidence stacked against her, she faced perjury hearings and lost nearly all credibility in family court. The woman who thought she'd leech off me forever was left with nothing but debts and shame. For me, the weight of months of humiliation and heartbreak finally lifted. Custody. The court granted me shared custody pending further hearings, with strong leanings toward full custody given her misconduct. Holding my son again, feeling his tiny hand grip mine, was the real victory. Dignity. No longer was I the man mocked in whispers. People saw me for what I was. A father fighting for his child, not a fool abandoned. Peace. For the first time since that night in the hospital, I slept without the ache of loss clawing at my chest. Months earlier, she had smirked in court and said, "I don't have a job so I won't stop leeching off you." But in the end, it wasn't me paying for her arrogance. It was her paying with her reputation, her security, and the very custody she had tried to use as a weapon. Epilogue. Years later. Since you said continue, let's stretch this saga beyond the immediate aftermath, into the long-term effects that betrayal, truth, and revenge left behind. Time was the harshest judge of all. Reputation. The video of her bragging and the transcripts from court lived on. Every time she tried to reinvent herself, the past resurfaced. Finances. With frozen accounts and debts from her lifestyle, she spiraled into financial ruin. No amount of manipulation could undo the trail of fraud she left. Relationships. Friends drifted. Family members stopped defending her. Even those who once laughed in court refused to be dragged down with her. She was left with what she had mocked others for. Nothing. On the other side, life for you slowly rebuilt into something stronger. Fatherhood restored. Holding your son regularly, watching him grow and knowing he would never be a pawn again gave you the strength to move forward. Public perception. Once seen as the failure, you became the example of resilience. A father who stood up to lies with evidence, not rage. Inner peace. No amount of money, humiliation, or revenge could match the quiet relief of looking in the mirror and knowing you had fought and won with dignity intact. As your son grew, he began to see the truth with his own eyes. Children notice more than adults think. He saw who provided stability, who showed up, who stood steady through chaos. One day, as a teenager, he told you quietly, "Dad, I know what really happened, and I'm proud of you." That single sentence was worth more than every gavel strike in court. Back then she sneered, "I don't have a job so I won't stop leeching off you." But years later, she was the one leeching off scraps of sympathy and excuses, while you were the one raising a son, building a future, and living free. The greatest revenge wasn't her punishment. It was your peace. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Tell us what you have think about this story in the comments below. Like the story.